Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Whichever corner of the world you're dialing in from digitally, thank you very much for joining me on today's webinar. My name is Sam Jenks, CRO and SRM expert and enthusiast at Kodiak Hub. Looking forward to digging into today's session with all of you in attendance. We're going to wait a moment here just to allow the last individuals that might be popping into the session to join us, and we're then going to get into the day's content. As you guys have seen, I have dropped already in the chat line a little bit of an overview for today's session. We, of course, are going to be covering the topic at hand here, the cost of inaction, what poor SRM is costing your business, the financial but also operational costs, and how we can be able to also maybe calculate that COI and provide a decision-making matrix that determines, is our business ready to break away from the status quo, or is it just fine to continue on as is? I think that's where we are today. We're looking forward to provide those in attendance here with a little bit of ammunition, that's kind of language and insight to go internally and get investment for new technology, be it SRM or others. And obviously, we want to be able to make sure that we also give you guys the opportunity to ask your questions today. We will, of course, reserve the last 5 to 10 minutes for a Q&A session so that everybody has the opportunity to be able to ask questions should they have them as well. We are starting to have people file in. I see here about 10 people have joined in the last minute. I'm sure that there will be a few more that file in as we get into the day's content, and absolutely looking forward to doing so. To heat up the chat, it would be fantastic because we're all calling in from so many different places around the world. Where are you calling in from? Typically, I'm based out of Stockholm myself, but I'm out of our US offices today in Boston, Massachusetts. Please drop in the chat line right now. Where are you calling in from? Always awesome to be able to see who we have in attendance and where those individuals are based out of. Derbyshire, UK, Staffordshire, the Netherlands. Hello, Maurice. Singapore, London, Boden, Tjena tjena Maria. More individuals from the UK. Titti in Finland, hey, hey. There is Germany in attendance. Sorry, Guten Morgen, I know, but afternoon, I feel a bit blue-eyed here. I'm struggling. Leeds, Stockholm is with us. South Africa, awesome to be able to see such a blend, and thank you all for joining for today's session as well. Dzięki to you, Bozena, in Warsaw, Poland. Fantastic. Without any further ado, then, I think that we'll probably have, like I said, a few last attendees jumping in as it is right over the top of the hour, but let's get into the day's content, at least today's agenda for the session. The day's agenda we have at hand is a quick look at Kodiak Hub at a glance. First and foremost, we want to be able to give a little bit of background to what's going on in SRM in 2026. I think it's important to frame up where we are before we understand where we're able to go and what the journey is ahead of us. We're going to talk a little bit about building that business case for supplier relationship management. And I think that it's very often that we look at ROI when we're talking about building business cases. With that being said, we're going to talk today more specifically about the other side, which is the cost of doing nothing, right? The financial and operational consequences of poor SRM and or SRM that remains the status quo. What is it costing your business to do so? And I think that today's session is really focused on trying to have you and give you an understanding of how to calculate that COI, but also give you the decision-making framework to understand, are you ready? Are you mature for an SRM solution? We'll also then get into a very brief demonstration of the Kodiak Hub platform, where we then show off a few key features that, of course, help our customers to be able to adopt our solution and absolutely see to that they are breaking the chains of the status quo as well. For those of you that are not familiar with Kodiak Hub at a glance, we are headquartered out of Stockholm, Sweden, with offices, however, in the UK, Germany, Poland, and now Boston, Massachusetts. We are customer favorites. We are part of the ProcureTech 100 and 50 to watch. It's not just me saying so. If you're interested in learning more about us, feel free to Google, check out Capterra, check out our reviews within G2, as well as then also in different types of resources such as Hackett or Auto Procurement publications of ProcureTech 100 and the 50 to watch. Our solution is focused within the SRM space, and we are a best of breed provider there. As you see on screen here is the overview of the Kodiak Hub suite. Our SRM suite consists of the baseline functionality, which sits in the hub, and the various modules as you see to the left and the right. Our primary focus is to be an operating system for procurement organizations, focusing on lifecycle management, everything from the initial intake and registration to onboarding and self-assessment, third-party risk management focused on sanctions, PEP, financials, media, country risk from various aspects, whether that be geopolitical, environmental, social, disaster risks. All of these different types of aspects that are important and crucial to resilience in the supply chain. Quality management within the focus of audits, the ability to manage corrective actions, workflows for qualification, as well as then also performance evaluation. The hub servicing as really that single source of truth for supplier and product information management, document management, reporting, and as we mentioned before, workflows and collaboration. We work with really awesome world-class procurement teams. Thank you to those of you that are in our customer base that are in attendance today. Without you guys, we're nothing. We really look forward to maybe seeing somebody in attendance's logo up on this screen today. When it's all said and done, our focus is to help companies break out of their status quo and adopt a solution focused around modern supplier relationship management and how it is that we can be able to do so, we're going to talk more about today. So to set the scene a little bit, I wanted to be able to talk about the state of the union in Q1 within procurement more broadly, but also within supplier relationship management. But before we get into that, I am always curious as to who do we have in attendance today? Where are you currently at in your process when it comes to the journey of supplier relationship management and supplier relationship management technology? So I've just launched a poll here. So if you can take a moment to be able to answer on this particular poll, which is on stream now, where are you in your journey of supplier relationship management and supplier relationship management technology? Are you currently just in a phase of gaining awareness, gaining an understanding of what's out there in the market? Are you getting more educated in the sense of that you're building momentum internally? And or selection? Are you actually actively looking to select a solution? I apologize, this was a miss on my side. The poll also should have had one last choice. I can actually add that here. Already adopted. Apologies on that. We'll then add that into the poll as well, in the live poll. Are you already mature? Have you already adopted something? That's the fourth item that you can be able to fill out here. Just to be able to gauge an understanding of where everybody is in their journey related to supplier relationship management, which is always a good starting point for the discussion. All right, super. Thank you guys for engaging. It looks like about 60%, a little bit more, are in this phase that are gaining an understanding or educating themselves in the space of supplier relationship management and SRM technology, whereas about 40% are actively looking for solutions at the moment as well. Super to be able to understand that most people in attendance are early stage. Those others are currently actively looking for a technology solution. And with that being said, I think that there's going to be insights for everyone here. If you're actively looking for a solution, well, this is definitely a session for you because we're going to support in the ability to be able to build the business case, something that's I think everybody in attendance here knows is really easier said than done when it's all said and done, right? Getting that investment in SRM technology, in procurement technology, period, is challenging. And there's statistics to back that up that we're going to talk about today. To frame up what we mean by SRM, I think it's always good to start by putting bookends on the program, the process, what it is that we're looking to accomplish here. I think that our model that we like to come back to time and time again is really focused on the pyramid. This is where SRM has value to be able to offer to the end customer, whether it be through technology or a program or your process. SRM is able to offer value to a procurement organization in three primary areas: operational, of course, removing low value administrative tasks; tactical, by knowing who your suppliers are, making sure that they're compliant, that they're qualified, that you have better opportunities to negotiate your agreements and find more agile lines of supply; and strategic, from a perspective of actually being able to create competitive edge, bring better services and products to market, collaborating and driving performance of your vendor base. SRM is critical and it touches so many areas of the lifecycle management across source to pay, yet still so many teams are really not focusing on it as something that is going to reach its full potential, right? It's lagging behind. And we see this in the Hackett report from the key priorities in 2026. I think it was pretty interesting to be able to see here. What you see on screen to the left and the right are a few different figures that come from the Hackett key priorities report. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see these are the top 10 priorities drawn out from 2026 when it comes to procurement teams. Number one being ensuring supply continuity. 2, improving spend and cost reduction. 3, deploying AI-enabled technology. 4, transforming the operating model. And 5, acting as a strategic advisor to the business. One that I thought was quite interesting that it raised to number 5, but really being able to support in areas such as supply risk management, digital transformation, corporate ESG objectives, and alike. All things that supplier relationship management can be able to support with, and lifecycle management of the vendor base can be able to support with. On the right-hand side of the screen, being, of course, that savings and value realization is crucial for the role of procurement. The other thing that was found during this report is how are we going to get there, right? What are going to be the techniques that are utilized, the main value levers that are utilized in procurement to make sure that teams can be able to actually realize savings and value creation? What we see there are, again, 3 particular areas of negotiation, strategic sourcing, and category management, all of which can be able to be really supported by the implementation of SRM as a program, process, and technology, which I thought was very interesting. Equally to that, we see that SRM has seen increased investment by your peers. And for the most part, it's meeting expectations when technology is being deployed. Some of the key takeaways that I found from this particular overview, as you see here, these were the technologies that were adopted and business objectives, that were realized during the last year and those that are coming in this upcoming year. And some of the key takeaways that we see here is that 67% of your peers plan to invest in upgrading or investing in brand new supplier lifecycle or relationship management technology, where the majority of those that did roll out either a pilot or adopt a full solution, that 63% of those met expectations, which of course was one of the tooling's expectations that were met at the top end, where we see CLM and e-sourcing actually lagged quite a bit behind. So SRM is important. It hits on the top 5 priorities. It's a value lever to be able to create savings and value creation. But still, teams, of course, lack the ability to be able to get investments in it. I think that this also requires a mindset shift. Why? is because SRM long sat as kind of a subset of source to contract, right? It was only about segmentation. Today, in the modern S2P process and tech stack, SRM, SPM, third party risk management, they're embedded in lifecycle management. They are equally end to end and need to be integrated in that way as the ERP. The modern tech stack of today is diversified. It is multiple solutions servicing their specific use cases with depth and also with a real capability to be able to deliver value long term. Kodiak sits at the core of a lot of these enterprise architectures. With that being said, SRM is definitely a space that is going to heat up in 2026. And if it's not on your radar, which I assume that it is by being in attendance today, then it most certainly should be. To be able to double back, however, though, to some of the top priorities, I was actually curious in hearing from everybody here. What are the top priorities that you saw, these top 5 priorities, that are the most pressing for you and your team today? Take a moment to be able to answer the poll that is on screen now. Which of the top priorities from Hackett Group are the most pressing for your procurement organization as you see it? We have some answers rolling in here. Please, again, take a moment to be able to answer the poll that's on screen now. It'd be really interesting to understand what the top priorities are of these top 5. And I'm assuming that we're going to see a split, right, between them, as all of them, I'm sure, are priorities. But if you're only able to pick one, what is it? Very interesting. We have about 50% of the attendees voting. If we can finish out here in 3, 2, 1. All right. Interesting to be able to see. Cost is king, right? Spend reduction, value creation via spend reduction is atop the list, and ensuring supply continuity comes in as second here, which was in fact the number 1 priority from Hackett, but totally understandable that those, of course, are rather interchangeable within them. I think that what we'll try and dive into today is how can we be able to tie back the value that SRM has to offer to these particular priorities. I think that what's very interesting to be able to see here is that in 2026, we're going to be able to see teams that have a lot more to do and a lot less people to be able to do it. This comes also directly from the Hackett report. Priorities are growing, expectations are growing, but our workforces are being cut, our operating budgets are being reduced, and there's more to do. So what does this leave us with? Well, the equation is to do more with less faster. And of course, technology is one of the things that's going to be able to help us to do that. Unfortunately, however, we see from Gartner that procurement organizations get only 2 out of 10 of the solutions that they ask for. Budgets are slim to be able to sharpen your elbows and get your space in the enterprise architecture with new procurement technology. What we're going to try and arm you guys with today is the right language, the right levers to be able to pull when it comes to the cost of inaction and how to calculate that, but also to be able to build that business case in a compelling way that speaks the language of your CFO or your COO, who ultimately will be signing the check. And why is this so important? Well, because you're doing the selling. It's not me. It's not my team. This might be a shocking statistic to some of you. It might be a statistic that some of you already know and recognize and agree with. The vast majority of the sales process and buying of software as a service technology happens without me and my team in the room. It's you. It's your ability to be able to not buy as you're all experts at, but to sell. And again, today we're going to give you some of that ammunition as how to be able to do it better. So to start, I want to take a quick look behind the scenes. And this is actually maybe how to say insider baseball, right? Giving you guys a little bit of tips as to how it is that sales organizations typically qualify the value to be offered via the MEDPIC qualification method. So before I start launching words at everybody, I want to just understand, are you guys familiar with MEDPIC? Do you know what this is? And if not, no worries. We're amongst friends here. Please just take a second to be able to answer so we understand who in this attendance does or does not know what MEDPIC is. Take a second just to be able to answer on screen here. All right. I think that we have enough votes to see the vast majority of individuals here are not familiar with MEDPIC, which is perfectly fine. And it helps us to be able to give you guys some useful information then. So I'll stop that poll, remove that from stream, and we'll get into MEDPIC. So again, looking behind the scenes here, MEDPIC is actually a sales qualification framework. With that being said, I think that it can be useful in the sales process internally as well, right? When we're looking to be able to harness real champions of change, harness that economic buyer, the leaders in our business, their attention, and make sure that they understand what is important to the business and how it is that we are going to be able to implement a solution and actually drive forward value. And what we're going to focus in on more than anything in this framework of MEDPIC, which is identified by metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria and process, the paper process, identifying of pain, championing competition. And this is how sales teams qualify when you're meeting them. Many sales teams, top performing sales teams, qualify if there is in fact an opportunity, but also to support the businesses that they're working with in a buying cycle, right? To enable buyers to be able to build solid business cases. Metrics are a key part of this, probably the most key part of this. And this is where we're going to really focus in on today. Metrics are often, when spoken about, broken down into three main pillars: M1, M2, and M3. And I think that this is language that's important to be able to understand, right? When we're talking about metrics. Why? Is because metrics often get stuck in M1. It's the pain, right? It's the user level, the team level pain. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? This can be a big driver of change. But when it's all said and done, M1 is what's broken. M2 is what's broken and what it's costing you. And M3 is tying that to one of the big objectives that are on the whiteboard of your CEO, CFO, or COO. Why does it matter to the business? So to be able to frame this up, what we've put together are three different scenarios related back to supplier relationship management and how supplier relationship management can be able to support and how you could be able to define, are you talking in M1, 2, or 3 metrics? And how it is, of course, that also can be able to impact the way that you're actually able to build the case for each of these particular areas. So let's talk about the classic pain that SRM can solve for: delays in onboarding or qualification. The M1 pain would say, well, it takes forever, right? It's different every time. There's spreadsheets flying around. It's a bit of a mess. When we talk in M2 terms, well, there we're quantifying that pain. We're determining that it takes about circa 6 weeks and it involves multiple tools. There's a certain number of vendors that we're onboarding every month, and that then equals X amount of hours of our team of manual work and bottlenecks per year. The strategic, the M3, why it matters to the business, is linked back to how that is blocking us being able to spend or onboard suppliers faster, meeting our SLAs to the rest of the business. This is the critical issue, of course, particularly if your business is growing via acquisition and or, for example, has high demands on innovation from engineering. This is the strategic level pain that, of course, is going to be speaking the language of your CFO. Lacking the visibility for supplier risk. Another pain point that we could be able to tie metrics to. The bottom level pain, well, we don't really have a consistent way to be able to track it, right? We were exposed. It's mostly gut feel and email threads or Excel spreadsheets. Quantifying that, well, maybe only 30% of our strategic suppliers are reviewed, and there's a potential impact on that, right? Of reputational risk or production delays. The strategic level impact, again, maybe there's been commitments made from a ESG perspective or from a resilience perspective, a mandate in the organization, and now there's a governance gap in the business that could potentially cost on brand and shareholder value, right? This is, again, how we can be able to tie the individual pain to quantifying it to a strategic top level. Another aspect tied to supplier relationship management is the implication of poor audit readiness. The pain might be that, again, audit season is painful. It's a chaos. It's manual, digging through to find things in SharePoints and the like, right? Quantified, here we see that every audit prep cycle requires X amount of weeks, and from that, it's a certain number of hours per audit. And we're, of course, bogging down our supplier quality team in things that they otherwise could be spending on strategic activities. The strategic level goal would be, well, what is the mandates? Is it CSRD, EUDR, right? There's various legislative requirements out there in the market that not only require that we manage that we understand the compliance level of quality management of our supplier base, but that we actually are actively managing the quality, right? With corrective actions and have audit trails and these things as well. Why is because, of course, we're going to have to report on it when it's all said and done. So to recap, metrics that matter come within different formats. But what you always want to try and do when building the case, whether it be for SRM or any technology, is to link back the pain to what it's costing you to why it matters to the business. Without these three different areas of operational, tactical, and strategic level of gain, right, it's hard, of course, to be able to quantify the risk of doing nothing. And I think that gets us into the primary focus for today, which is how, in fact, do we calculate the cost of inaction, actually doing nothing. It's hard to do, simply, first and foremost. Let's start there, right? I think that the cost of inaction is a very interesting topic. Why? Is because typically when we're building cases, we build up our business cases in this format, right? What's the ROI? What are we gonna gain if we invest? It's very rare, though, that we ask, what is the cost of us doing absolutely nothing? And I think that the main difference of COI versus ROI is that while COI measures the cost of the status quo, ROI is the value of the improvement, right? COI is based on the existing stack, whereas ROI is the future performance. And these are tightly connected, of course. But the thing that I think is the most important here is that COI measures today's real loss of doing nothing, whereas ROI is an estimate of potential gain. COI, therefore, is more true to actually happen, right? If you continue on as you are, it is almost guaranteed that this loss is inevitable. And I think that this is an important distinction that a lot of teams, of course, are missing out on the opportunity to be able to build the case for procurement technology. So, if we define it, what are we talking about with COI? Well, it's the total quantifiable loss that your business will incur by delaying or choosing to not make a change. And change is hard, right? Adopting a new solution, fixing a process, mitigating risk. Sometimes spending a week to save a month, it's a challenging thing to do. But this is the cost that accrues during the status quo. And it's a silent cost, right? little bit of slippage here and there, bad process over, it's the things that we don't see on our top line being impacted. But to be able to frame this up, I love this example that I heard from a sales leader not super duper long ago at an event for software as a service in Malmo, Sweden. A woman by the name of Jen, she goes by Demand Jen on LinkedIn, and she's really great at talking about how to build the business case for buying technology. And to illustrate the cost of inaction, she paints the picture of the story between new technology and the status quo. So in this example, there's a $100 water repellent rain jacket. And that $100 rain jacket is 10 times the cost of the status quo, my $10 umbrella. I live in Chicago in this particular example. This is the story of me. My name is Joe, okay? And here's a fun fact. In Chicago, I live in the suburbs, right? But I work in the city. The average days of rain every single year is that there's 119 days of rain, which means that there's 10 days of rain every month, 2.5 days per week. The average person actually, and this is real statistic, owns about 2 umbrellas at $10 an umbrella, which means that the total cost of ownership of staying dry is just $20. And the average number of people who remember their umbrella is about 5% during a raining day. So what does this mean? Well, it means that I get caught in the rain 2.5 days every single week, and I say, no worries. I'll just pop on an Uber. I don't need to take the T today. I'll be able to just grab an Uber back home. So what does that accrue to? Well, that $15 Uber, because I forgot my umbrella, accrues to then surge pricing because it's raining, which then makes that I pay $40 for that Uber. I do that 5 times a month. It accrues to $200 a month on Ubers, which is then 2 times the cost of just one portable raincoat, racked up again in just 1 month. And while I know that this, you might be looking at this saying, well, what the heck does that have to do with procurement technology? This directly frames up what the cost of doing nothing really is costing us on a very basic level, how every single day that goes by where we wait is a day of potential loss, right? So I know what you might be thinking. Well, how in the heck do I know if I am able to calculate my COI, and how can I calculate my COI? And also, how do I even know if I need an SRM system or I'm ready for an SRM system at all? Why would I go forward with this investment at all? To illustrate this, I want to start by giving a bit of a COI calculator, and then I want to give a decision-making framework that can give you an understanding of if SRM is really something that you should be focusing on. So let's get into the example case. Let's say that I am generic company ABC, mid-sized business, small mid-sized business, 100 million in revenue, 600 employees, about 20 people working in procurement, quality, and supply chain, 1,000 suppliers across the globe, 5 global sites. And to do SRM today, I'm using a mix of ERP, Excel, and SharePoint. The status quo, right? This is what 72% of teams, by the way, are using. Everything from $100 million companies to $5 billion to $10 billion companies. We've seen it across the board. The majority of companies are still utilizing a mix of ERP, Excel, and SharePoint to manage suppliers. So this is the generic and basic company stuck in the status quo. How is it that they can be able to then quantify the cost of inaction? Well, there's a few levers that we can pull, and we talked about it before. SRM is able to deliver value at multiple layers: operational, tactical, and strategic. So if you look at the $100 million business with about 20 employees, that operational burden of low value tasks can be calculated very quickly, right? Of how much inefficiency is being practiced on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis. Let's just say that only 30% of those inefficiencies can be able to be removed, well, of course, that's 480K per year of your team that is a cost of inaction. From a tactical perspective, if we look at total spend times the percentage of tail spend, so we're looking at a classic 80% is in the bulk of spend, right? The 20% of our suppliers is 80% of spend, 20% sits in our tail. If we're only looking at 4% of that being spend leakage due to rogue spend and poor process when it comes to onboarding and qualification, late involvement of sourcing and procurement, leakage of only 4% of that tail could be up to 800K every single year. Risk exposure of disruptions or impacts on our brand, right, can be massive. And then, of course, the opportunities missed to be able to improve, have actual innovation together with our supplier base. These are the strategic levels. And taking just $100 million business, the average annual cost of inaction by sticking with the status quo related to SRM can be over $2 million. Scale that up into a business that is a 500 million, 1 billion, $5 billion business, and the cost of inaction scales as well. It starts to make a solution that costs $100,000 a year look pretty appetizing, right? So then you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I know if I'm ready for a solution or not? I think that this decision-making framework, and again, we're going to release these slides afterwards so you guys will be able to have the opportunity to see all of these particular elements and dig into the matrices that we have yourself. But our decision-making framework that we share here shows when status quo is good enough, what type of business you might be, and when SRM, a solution that's dedicated to SRM, is also essential. And if you remember, 67% of your peers are looking to either replace their current technology or upgrade their current technology or adopt something brand new. So it's obvious that plenty of businesses are feeling the same way about this, that SRM is essential. But if you're looking for a framework, we typically look at the rule of 6 of 9. If you're looking at this particular matrix, map it out. 6 of the 9 areas on the right-hand side, if your team and your business meets these particular requirements and or attributes, then a SRM, a dedicated SRM solution, is likely something that you would be gaining a lot from investing in. But more importantly, you would be avoiding a lot of cost of inaction as well. And with that being said, we want to be able to switch over to the live demo portion of today's session. And while I get my screen ready, I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be able to ask any questions that they may have. So if you have any questions to be able to ask, please feel free to be able to pop those into the chat line now, and we'll be able to revisit those when we come back around to the final Q&A section. And I'm just going to log in here to my account really briefly as well and switch over my screen. So just give me one moment to be able to do so. All right. Just waiting on my verification code here. Sorry about that. Let's switch over the screen then here to the live demonstration. And again, if you have any questions, both during the demo, but also surrounding today's content, please feel free to drop those in the chat line, and we will get back around to them during the end of today's session as well, which will be rounding out in about 5 to 10 minutes after the demonstration. So I'm going to simply share my screen here and make sure that then I add this to the stream. Sorry, I recognize that the sound had went out there. I hope that I'm back on here. Super. All right. I see that getting some thumbs up from the team. Apologies. And we're able to see the screen here. All right. Apologies. So we'll try that again. Welcome to the Kodiak platform. What we are seeing here is our supplier scorecard. And I think that this illustrates really the ability or the outcome that is possible related to a supplier relationship management platform, right? And of course, also highlights a lot of the areas that the cost of inaction can be able to be addressed by providing more robust capabilities to your team to have their information, data, and documentation in one place, cut down on manual processes, but also build robust outputs and insights related to risk, compliance, performance, and alike. This particular interface is the outcome of all of the processes that can be managed of assessment, audits, performance evaluations, and actions, giving us a one-stop shop, a 360-degree view of our supplier data and information, notes that have been left by ourselves or others in the team for internal communication, as well as then also on the left-hand side of the screen here, we see the overall health of this vendor. Up in the top right-hand side of the screen, we're able to see a snapshot to say, this vendor is in a particular area in our RAG rating, right? That is then a weighted average of these three pillars of health, as we like to talk about them: country risk, output and performance, and the operational practices. Each of these individual areas we can dive always deeper into, understanding how is the supplier performing. It allows us to, at a glance, be able to see, is the supplier doing well or doing poorly, to directly, actively trigger corrective actions, to dive deeper to understand the contents of each of these areas. And these are completely configurable to our customers' requirements as well. Equal to that, we're able to get a snapshot of their real output and performance. Are they in fact living up to the SLAs that we have in place between these different areas that are crucial for supplier delivery, supplier performance, and output? Equal to that, we have embedded risk management, financial results, media insights to understand, is there any type of adverse media or things happening within the market that are interesting to us? Equal to the last piece, which is then also the elements of sanctions and PET. We do a quick search here for a company that I'm sure will be able to pop up with something. We could be able to see then, for example, the embedded risk management that we can directly pull up a business, understanding their general information, identifiers, sources where they've been populated as a politically exposed business or special interest entity, and the individuals as well, even linked back to them. In the same interface, we have all documentation: ISO documents, contracts, codes of conducts, certificates of insurance, W-9s, you name it. Linked our commodities of our suppliers down to the commodity version so we can have product compliance, not just supplier compliance, as well as then all of the ongoing, as well as then also archived corrective actions, onboarding and qualification workflows, non-conformancies, quality-related activities such as 8Ds or PPAPs, all of them in one place that we can directly be able to access them, engage with the supplier, engage internally, and drive forward the relationship, all from one interface. And with that being said, as I mentioned before, I think that it's important that if you're interested in learning more about Kodiak, you can feel free to be able to dive into it more with our experts within the space. What I'm actually going to do right now is shoot out a quick CTA. If you are interested, just click on screen here. You're going to be able to directly book a demonstration with our team. And if you give me 1 second, then we will also launch to be able to download the slides. So if you're interested in booking a demonstration, getting deeper, having one of our members of our team help you to be able to build your business case for supplier relationship management technology, then feel free to click on the screen now. And then we will also share the slides here. So please feel free to also click on the screen now if you would like to grab the slide deck for today. It'll take you to a external online link where you're just going to need to share your email, and then you can be able to download those slides as well. Fantastic. Well, thank you all for being able to sit in for today. Apologies about the slight technical hiccup there when we switched over to the demonstration. I wanted to be able to ask really quickly if there is any questions, please drop them in the public chat and we'll make sure that we get around to those. So we'll wait just a few more moments to take any questions that come up within the chat. Going once, going twice. All right. If there is no questions, then absolutely big thank you to everyone. Oh, here we go. Maurice, thank you. Just in the nick of time here. Question came in from Maurice. How do you come up with, let me take this CTA away, excuse me about that. So Maurice's question is a poignant one. How do you come up with the break even for a company to decide whether SLM is profitable for them? I think that this is interesting, right? I mean, it obviously comes from the cost of the solution, but I think that the business case is deeply rooted within those elements that we had spoken about in our SRM in our COI calculator, right? First and foremost, I think that can be able to be determined by a few key elements. How many people are in your team? What is your spend on direct and indirect materials, right? What is the time that's being spent as well of that team on, for example, low value or administrative tasks? What is your total spend? What is the percentage of tail spend? What is the potential rogue or maverick spend, right? Also then determining your risk exposure based upon, for example, incidents that have happened, health and safety or quality or things of the like, right? Also then opportunities missed on sales opportunities or innovation opportunities with vendors. Those are some of the things that we were offered up in our COI calculator, as we had mentioned before. With that being said, I think that calculating COI requires, of course, good inputs. And these are a few areas where you can be able to calculate COI. I think that there's plenty of others that you could also be able to dig into beyond these particular items that have been shared. And I think that this in combination with ROI are important. But the element to remember here is, again, that COI is the cost of us doing nothing. And it's grounded in the current existing inefficiencies with sticking with the status quo, whereas ROI is reliant upon projected improvements, right? Both of them should be part of a business case, but nonetheless, COI is more simple to be able to quantify based upon the current mode of operating. And again, that's what we mean by the cost of the status quo. So I hope that answered your question, Maurice. Sabrina asked the question, is there a way to assess a supplier's risk on human rights, ESG, based on their location and category? Absolutely. There is elements that are possible without contacting the supplier. We, in our solution, utilize the capability of third-party risk management solutions that give those types of insights, particularly on a country level. With that being said, if you're looking specific to their operational practices, there's no way to be able to get that information without getting input from the supplier. Sure, you can be able to scrape their website, for example, for things such as ISO documentation and the like, but you're never going to truly understand their modes of operating without engagement. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to make it easy for the supplier to be able to engage. No inputs that are requiring, I would say logins from the suppliers or messy interfaces. In our solution, when people are engaging with the supplier, the system is automated schedule sendouts. It chases down the vendor for you. And with that being said, it also gives them an online easy access portal with one-time links that they can access via their email. 98% of business professionals have emails. Why would we make it more complicated than them being able to enter into a portal via their email? Auto save, online, clear as to what the status progression is of that response. Because honestly, the supplier responses is a crucial element to be able to assess risk and operational practices. And unfortunately, of course, there's not a lot of ways to be able to do it if you're keen on getting their specific operational practices without, of course, reaching out to that particular supplier. With that being said, again, that's why the ease of use is so important for them. So thanks for that question as well, Sabrina. Really a relevant question as well. Much appreciated. Again, if you guys would like to be able to book a demonstration of Kodiak, feel free to just click on the button that's on screen now. If there's any other questions, feel free to drop them into the line. I know that many people probably have meetings at the top of the hour. I know that we've already lost about 10 of those 10 to 15 people that were in attendance before. The recording will be provided to everyone, so don't worry about that if you're interested in it. And if you have not had the time to download the slides, then you can also get one last opportunity to be able to do so now. Click that on so you can be able to do so if you haven't yet gotten them. Again, one last chance if there's any final questions about today's content or the Kodiak platform, feel free to shoot those through. All right. Seems as if there is no further questions. Thank you so much for your time, for your engagement during today's session. Always awesome to be able to see so many people here in attendance, looking to be able to build the business case to address the financial and operational consequences related to poor SRM. Sticking with the status quo is fine, but I think that everybody in attendance here wants a bit better than fine. So hopefully today was able to give you a little bit of insight as how to get there. Thank you so much for your time.